Hello everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you very much for joining me here. Hope you're having an amazing day. We're going to take a quick look at Bitcoin once again, kind of just see what's going on in the last 24 hours. We obviously had a pretty decent sell-off this morning, of course, when the market had opened, and just before actually with the pre-market hours. We'll go and take a look at that. And of course, if you're new to the channel, not a financial advisor, I just love teaching people how to trade. If you'd like to become a better trader, consider joining my trading community. I also have a trading academy rolling out with month end. That should be a very awesome opportunity. That'll be available through our website, and I'll provide you with that site link once it's fully built. For now, let's go and take a look here at Bitcoin, kind of work our way down. Let's go ahead and start with a 1 week and go from there. So first and foremost, on the 1 week chart, we're still below 50 and over the 200-day SMA. That won't change for some time, but just bear in mind that the 200 is working its way up to about 20,000, which coincidentally is basically right around that shelf that we had previously before Bitcoin took off in December last year, or basically 2020, for example. So just note that the 200 is working its way up. It should be closer to about 23,000, hopefully by the time we get there. If that were to happen, of course, not saying we're going to hit 23,000, but it's certainly looking like a likelihood at this point if we do lose 29,000, okay? Because again, 29,000 was tested 3 times in the previous weeks, of course, during the summer when Bitcoin sold off heavily in the week of the 12th, I believe it was, May 12th, and then of course it stayed down. It came down about 30,000 just under a couple of times. So just note that if the price were to continue to digress, 29,000 would be kind of our last support level before we get down to 23. So it's a pretty big gap there, very low volume in between that range. And ultimately, if we were kind of to take a look at the volume, you'll be able to see that obviously the most amount of volume accumulation is close to the price point we're at right now. So 33,500 has the most amount of volume. Again, if we were to lose that level, there's not a lot of support below 33. So just know we're kind of almost on a razor's edge right now, even though 29 was proven to be a very strong support level in the past. You can see these large candle wicks down, implying that we have low volume in that range, which is not a good sign, okay? So again, just prepare for the worst here and hope for the best. I do hope the price recovers. I was expecting the price actually to hit 37.5 before it came down any lower, but truth be told, the market opened poorly, and big surprise, Bitcoin came down as well. So we just kind of be realistic and understand that that is a very normal thing right now. Okay, it's aligning itself with NASDAQ for a lot of different reasons, and of course, if you pay attention to the futures, you'll notice too that Bitcoin is just digressing and running concurrent with the market, and the market's pretty much in a downtrend right now. Taking a look at RSI, we're trending down still closer to 30. Okay, now 30 is not a great place, obviously, but that would be a good place to bounce. So if the price were to continue to come down lower, 30 on the RSI on the weekly rarely happens. Okay, if you look at its history, we've only seen 30 on the RSI one time in the past, 3 to 4 years. Okay, now if we go to a different chart here and we look at the older chart for Bitcoin, yes, there was one instance where the price did come under 30 on the RSI. That was right around 25, and that was back in 2015. Okay, so just note that it's rare for the RSI to come under 30 or to not bounce off of 30 effectively. We can see that bounce here on December 10th in 2018, and of course, almost a similar bounce back in March 2020. Okay, both of those instances recovered quickly afterwards. Okay, so just bear in mind, if the price were to come down to 30 and continue to progress down, there's a very strong likelihood we'll see a recovery from there. It won't necessarily jump straight to the moon. That's not what I'm saying, but it shouldn't go much lower from there. Okay, just bear that in mind. That is definitely something we need to kind of understand and just kind of think about in the big picture. All right, so anyways, that's where the 1 week's telling us. Not great, but we are getting closer to that potential shelf, that bottom, which would hopefully be either A, 33,500, where we're kind of at presently, and or 29,000. Anything below 29 is going to be uncharted territory. We're going to be in price discovery, and it's going to probably just, I wouldn't say free fall from there, because how much lower could it go? But literally 20,000, 23,000 would be the next major support. All right, looking at the 1 day chart here, this is another thing I was talking about earlier, in the fact that the previous support becomes resistance, which is 30, right? So 30 on the RSI, anytime for the most part, 30 on the RSI, you'll see a bounce off of 30 on the 1 day. Since we blew past that, we're now below that. And what that does is that's basically creating a resistance shelf. So the fact of the matter is, the RSI may not come back up over 30 for some time because of that. When we see this happen too, if you saw some bull runs from before, right? I think Solana is a good example of that, where it took off really hard, really fast. It came up over 70 on the RSI. Anytime the price tried to come back down below 70, it just continued to bounce and go higher. We might experience the inverse of that in the sense that RSI holding the price under 30, working as a resistance level, it's essentially keeping the price down below that and continuing this bearish divergence. Okay, so I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see the RSI stay under 30 and just continue to work itself down. Eventually it'll average itself out. It can't take place forever, but just know that we're not really on the good side of the fence right now. Things are not looking great, and obviously I think we know that. We shouldn't expect an immediate recovery. Okay, that doesn't happen. I think you're hoping for the best, and that's, while it's okay to hope for the best, we got to be realistic in the fact that the TA is telling us there's nothing good here. There's literally no signs of a turnaround in the immediate future. Perhaps eventually we are reaching exhaustive states. That's perfectly fine. That's very standard. In fact, why don't we go ahead and take a look at TD sequential here? What do you know? We're at a 9 on TD sequential. So we've had 9 days of bearish divergence continuing, just straight down almost. Yes, we had a green day yesterday, but that's typical weekend behavior. And here it is the weekday. We got a nice candle wick down. And the price is trending closer to about 34,000 right now. So all in all, again, not great, but traditionally speaking, we shouldn't expect to see anything more than 4 more days of bearish divergence. So we could really likely see a turnaround this week. I think the likelihood of that is higher than it is for the price to continue to go down. I'm not saying a turnaround and the price comes up and breaks a major resistance level. I do think that 37.5 is now the key level resistance that could very well be, well, I wouldn't say broken, but it'll probably come up and test that, right? That would be a better case scenario, I would say, this week. If it breaks 37.5, be prepared for 40,500 as well as a next major resistance. I do not foresee the price coming above any of those two planes. And just bear in mind, too, with this descending wedge type of pattern, the price is continuing to progress downwards. It keeps getting candle wicks up and getting rejected. We have somewhere in the range, just say the price were to go sideways from here, best case scenario, we're going to see the first week of February as a potential break above, okay? So it's going to be a little while before we can expect the price to, break this wedge pattern, unless there's some crazy awesome catalyst that causes the price to increase, which is not on the horizon by any stretch of the imagination. We shouldn't expect the price to come back. But what I'm saying here is that today is the 9th day of bearish divergence. And therefore, we should be reaching that exhaustive state. So we might likely see a turnaround in the short term. In other words, you might see 34,000 right now here today, but then maybe 35, 36, or 37 over the next couple of days. That's a possibility. Not saying it's going to happen. There's really no indication that we're going to see a turnaround here. Good news is we did see 33,500 work as a strong support level. In fact, why don't we take a quick look at the 4-hour? You can kind of identify how, yes, we wicked down below, but 33,500 works very strong as a support. So that key level Fibonacci retracement level is helping us stay in place, okay? So do I think we're going to see anything sub 33,500 today? Maybe, maybe not. I know it's not very decisive, but generally speaking, we should see some consolidation further is my guess. Now, we could very well see a couple of candle wicks down here in the immediate future, but I don't speculate we're going to see a dramatic drop. That appears to be a nice, decent support level so far. Now, one thing you gotta understand is last week, every time the market opened, the price jumped up pretty significant. And then when the market closed, the price dropped down. In other words, taking profits, etc. That's usually a very common place at the end of the trading day. Now, this is almost an inverse scenario where there's actually sell-off occurring at the beginning of the day, so we could possibly see a rally near the close of business here today. Again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's a very strong likelihood based on previous patterns and behavior. But generally speaking here, the bottom line is 33,500's tentatively holding as a support level. We've seen 8 hours in a row where the price action will not come below that, and we have to understand that could very well continue to hold. Is there any sure? It is not a sure sign, right? It doesn't tell us and give us confirmation that we're feeling okay. Now, when it comes to confirmation, we can look at a few different key indicators. We are bouncing off 70 on the RSI right now, so that's a good sign there in that sense. We're not extremely oversold any longer. So the great news there is that 70, correction, I'm sorry, 30 on the RSI is holding as a strong support level, and that could and should effectively continue to allow the price action either at least go sideways or possibly to increase in the near future, right? Again, we're at this exhaustive state, so the likelihood of the price turning around in the immediate future, I think, is fairly high. I don't think it's going to significantly increase, but I do think we might see a slight push to 35, 36, or 37. That is a possibility. Again, that's just based on the technical data that we have here, right? Also, previous patterns from Bitcoin, we had a MACD convergence on the 4-hour here as well, but that's inevitable when the price action gets held down for so long, right? So I don't feel like super comfortable buying into this MACD convergence, right? But traditionally speaking, in the history of trading, a MACD convergence in the 4-hour chart is a very good sign, right? We see that shift in momentum, but again, the shift in momentum is only occurring because the price was so low for so long, okay? So again, not really a complementing factor per se, but I would say that it's more like a neutral scenario there where we're kind of almost breaking even. We have some buying pressure right around 33,500. Speaking of buying pressure, let's see if there's much volume. Really not a lot, of course. I know the candlesticks just started, so we don't see a tremendous amount, but just to reiterate, we have a strong shelf here up around 40,500 / 41,000, 42,000. Okay, so keep in mind if the price were to continue to progress back upwards and break 37.5, do not by any means consider us back into a bull type of market or bullish scenario, a short-term bullish push. Yes, it would be short-term. Yes, it would be a potential. You know, we might be making higher highs and higher lows. You'll see some altcoins taking off, but by no means are we going to be out of the clear. 40,500 is a major resistance, and we can see a tremendous amount of volume accumulation at that level. So just bear that in mind. There's definitely some things holding the price action down for now, and it will hold it down for some time. In fact, if we look at the moving averages as well, we've also got those things working, conversely, so to speak, pushing the price action further. Until we break back up above the 50-day SMA, we really don't have any consideration of the fact that we're even trending closer. So the first indication I would say in a turnaround, right, is to get the price back up over the 50-day SMA. Now, just to kind of note, just so you can kind of see here, when the price broke above the 50-day SMA here, before we got that dead cat and the price came back down, that could have been confirmation, right? Now, traditionally speaking, you don't want to have confirmation in just 1 or 2 candlesticks. You want to, that's why I recommend the full 1-day candlestick as a best time frame to identify, because then you know specifically that we spent the most amount of time at that level or higher. We got that candle wick up and it came right back down before the day closed, and it was just a total mess. It was a show of ridiculous selling off and selling pressure, of course, but it was just a perfect example of how the market can fool you in a lot of cases. So just bear in mind when you see the price break above on a 4-hour chart, above a key level resistance, such as a 50-day SMA, do not by any stretch of the imagination consider that just to be an instant shift in momentum. Yes, we're good to go. I'm going to go long and set my target at a really high point. Not even close. You need to have a full 1-day confirmation, and if you look at the 1-day candlestick on that day, you'll see that we had a candle wake up and candle went right back down. It just came crashing down. So it was kind of a false positive. I'm just mentioning that because if you see that happen again, just say we break above the 4-hour 50-day SMA, we're not going to be we're not back on track by any means, okay? So just prepare you for that, right? You will see a lot of altcoins taking off at that time. We'll see a good 10 to 20% pump from a lot of altcoins because, again, they've been held down for so long. But if that were to happen, try not to get ahead of yourself and try to be realistic and just, I would say, wait it out a little bit longer. You want full-on confirmation, and to me, a 24-hour period is a much better confirmation than only 8 to 12 hours where you see the price come up, dead cat, and drop, okay? Anyways, just some friendly advice there so you understand for future reference. I know that's not relevant now, but it could be relevant in the next couple of trading days, okay? Because there is a likelihood of the price reversing on the short term, and of course, if it were to, we'll see 37.5 and 40,500 potentially be tested. I think the likelihood of that is diminishing as time goes on. The closer we get to 29,000, the less likely we are to see the bounce and that strong recovery. Because the truth be told, market is terrible right now. As the market goes down, Bitcoin's aligned itself with the market, specifically more so the NASDAQ as well, and we can see that digression, okay? So they're working concurrently, so to speak. So just be mindful of that. That's why when market hours open, pre-market hours specifically, that's usually what, somewhere in the range, I think it's 2:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is 4 hours before the market opens. you'll see that shift in momentum. In fact, why don't we go ahead and quickly identify here? Look at this. Right around 3 a.m., probably about 30 minutes after the market had opened, we probably had a gap down from either NASDAQ or the traditional market. And of course, we see the price plummet right there at the market open. Okay. Now keep in mind that wasn't the traditional market open. That's 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. But at 2:30, right here, basically just rounding up at 3 o'clock, we saw that significant decrease. Obviously, we got this recovery here, and it's pushing back, but you have to pay attention to that. If you're going to kind of analyze how Bitcoin's going to do, pay attention to the time in which the traditional US stock market opens and see what kind of patterns emerge. Last week, when the market opened, we got a strong green candles followed by red candles just prior to the close, which is 1:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We might see that again today with this little increase. I would not be surprised if we see closer to 1:30 p.m. Here today, Pacific Standard Time, the price hits a resistance and comes back down. And we just keep rinsing and repeating that same action throughout the week. So a lot of day traders are channel trading and keeping that type of trading open. I prefer not to bother with that myself personally right now, specifically when I send out signals to my community, because it's just, there's no need to I guess, it feels more like gambling right now to me personally than actual trading, just because there's so much manipulation in the market right now. It's hard to really truly get a handle on it. So to me personally, just be very cautious if you're day trading and you're holding on to positions. Obviously, set your limits and ensure that you have a realistic risk tolerance. Again, these are all things that I cover in my trading academy. That'll be available month end, but I can tell you that this is just very concerning for me, the type of behavior that Bitcoin is exuding. We're making lower highs and lower lows. That's just the only way around it. And at this point, we cannot fool ourselves and think that we're back into a bullish trend. This is definitely still pushing to the downside. We need to see how 33,500 holds as a support. If it does hold as a support, then we'll be in pretty good shape. Let's look at some really smaller time frames here as well, just so you can kind of maybe anticipate the immediate future here and see what might happen. So generally speaking, if we were to kind of go with just the last 24 hours of trading, we could potentially see a resistance right around 34,700. The price is getting rejected out right now at about 34,300. Yeah. So I'm rounding up and down a little bit, but 34.3 right now is a tentative resistance. Obviously, it's very short term and it's hard to say specifically, but I wouldn't be surprised if the price were to continue up and then perhaps sell off closer to the end of the trading day. So just be mindful of what happens when the US stock market opens and closes. And that might help you understand a little bit more about what's happening here with Bitcoin. And then, we can kind of identify as well. So tomorrow we'll look at this again, of course, but I would say in the immediate future, we have potential resistance at 34.3 and 34.7. And of course, obviously, big picture, 37,500 would be the immediate resistance if the price were to continue to progress higher. I wouldn't expect that in the immediate future, but I do think that later this week we might see a slight uptrend. And just know there's a strong shelf right here at 36,250. So 36,250, the price couldn't pass and got rejected pretty hard last night. Something to be mindful of. So all in all, I would say, again, if you are the Bitcoin type and you want to consider investing in Bitcoin, feel free to do so. Just dollar cost average small portions of your amount, or your portfolio, of course, to ensure that you're not putting too much into one, because the likelihood of Bitcoin continuing down, I think, is still very high. We expected this Thursday and Friday last week, and over the weekend, we even had a stronger sell-off, surprisingly, Friday through Saturday. So I don't think we're going to see a strong sell-off in the immediate future, but I do think soon we should just be prepared for it. Okay, so be ready for it. But truth be told, we could see a slight reversal just based on the fact that we're at a 9 on TD sequential on the 1 day, and we have had 9 straight days of red, and the likelihood of seeing a green day soon is fairly high, just based on the law of averages, right? Again, there are no guarantees here, right? That's why we be careful and we be cautious. We set our stop losses and ensure we always have multiple profit targets in place when we take a trade. But I think sitting on your hands right now is probably one of the better case scenarios. Ultimately, set money aside for later, because we truly don't know when the bottom will occur. I don't think we're there yet, but if we are, why not wait for confirmation? Wait to make sure you're on the right side of the tracks instead of trying to buy every single dip. If you're going to buy every single dip, dollar cost average small portions of your total portfolio. And we're talking, less than 5% in most cases, just small amounts per at a time. And you can use the same scenario, the same thought process for altcoins as well, because it's equally the same scenario. Just know altcoins are, lowering at 2 to 3x of what Bitcoin is right now. It's a very, very strong knee-jerk reaction. So just be prepared for that and just be cautious and careful. I'll try to cover other altcoins again here soon, but honestly, sticking around with Bitcoin here as a consistent daily driver for the moment, just because I get the most amount of results or requests here more so. And the results speak for themselves, right? If you understand how Bitcoin's behaving, you can understand how most altcoins are behaving. 98% of altcoins right now are exuding the exact same behavior. So why not understand what's going on? Anyways, I hope you learned a thing or two here today. Sorry, this is kind of a long-winded conversation. I hope you learned something, of course. Thanks again for joining me here. Looking forward to getting to know you better if you decide you want to join my community. And thanks again to my current members for obviously all of your support. I deeply appreciate you. Thank you so much. We'll see you all soon. Have a good one.